This one is strange because nobody really knows what to expect, but everyone's already arguing about it. So this came out today. Trump is now saying that he is going to sign a new AI executive order this week, and it's supposed to override all the state level AI rules across the country. And the way they're describing it, it sounds like it's going to be one unified national rule, so tech companies don't get yanked around by 50 different governments. But that's not actually the part that grabbed me after reading this story. It's what they're hinting at behind the scenes and what this could mean if you're someone who watches how fast AI is moving and how slow government usually reacts. So I'm going to set this up because it's easy to miss the real stakes here. So states like California, New York, and Colorado, including Florida, I just did a story about it, and I posted it today. So check out that. It'll be the story before this one. These states have been writing their own AI laws, and a lot of the rules don't match. Some are strict, some are vague, and some are politically driven. And what Trump is basically saying is we're not doing the patchwork thing. He wants a single federal rule to bypass all of them. But here's where it gets interesting. When Politico reached out, his team wouldn't describe the order. They wouldn't even preview it. They wouldn't even give general boundaries. And that's usually, to me, a sign that something in the text is either controversial, incomplete, or politically explosive. And I'll get into why that matters in a second. But there's a bigger twist coming later in the video that connects something tech executives have been quietly lobbying for. So keep that in the back of your mind. So here's what we do know. He's calling it a one rule approach. It sounds clean. It sounds simple. But think about what that actually means. You're telling every state attorney general, every privacy office, every local tech regulator, you're done. Washington is taking the wheel. And depending on how you feel about federal power or state power, that's either a relief or a giant red flag. And I'm going to pause here because this is where I might go off on some tangents a little bit. So you got to ask yourself, do you trust a federal agency to regulate AI better than your state? Or do you trust your state more than the feds? Or do you just trust neither one and hope this whole thing settles before AI eats another industry? And that's the tension they're not saying out loud. Now, Politico said something that stood out. They mentioned that several states are pushing back already, which is not a surprise to me, calling this anti-democratic because it erases their authority, which I can completely understand why they would say that. And you can imagine California is not thrilled. But business groups, completely different reaction. Tech companies, they hate dealing with 50 different rule books. They've been lobbying for years for a single national standard, which is going to make it easier for them and make more money for them. And now they actually might be getting what they want. And that's when the question ends up hitting you. Is this being framed as protecting innovation, or is it protecting the companies who already control the entire AI ecosystem? And as well, these are the donors, keep in mind. And what happens when one rule becomes one bottleneck or one backdoor? So I'm going to add a little context because this ties into something Al Jazeera reported. They said the goal is to speed up AI progress by removing bureaucratic delays, which again is not a huge surprise. Now, this sounds great on paper. Nobody wants delays, but bypassing approvals is one of those phrases that can mean 100 different things, depending on who writes the fine print. Does bypass mean simple, or does bypass mean nobody checks anything? And in a lot of cases, especially with billion-dollar or trillion-dollar industries, it means nobody checks anything. These are different outcomes, and no one is explaining which version this is. There's also a weird timing piece here. The administration is trying to show strength on the AI regulation right after open AI hearings. And all of these safety scares, you're hearing a lot of stories that are coming out right now about chatbots and suicides, deep fakes, fraud cases, all kinds of crazy things that are happening. So a lot more lawsuits are coming out. So this might be a political response more than a policy one. And I think it happens to be both. And here's the open loop I want to leave hanging out for a moment. If this executive order really does override every state rule, what happens to all those lawsuits already underway? Does everything just get wiped out, or are they grandfathered in? And does big tech essentially get a reset button? And is that fair? And if that's true, who's going to benefit the most? And obviously we know who that's going to be. So let's move to what this means for normal people, because that part always gets ignored, especially farmers that are dealing with all of these AI infrastructure builds. Every system in your daily life is already being rebuilt on AI. The court system, legal system, healthcare, hospitals, education, schools. The job market is a nightmare. Hiring, HR, loans, and insurance. And if the rules are unclear or constantly changing, or suddenly rewritten from the top down, the risk isn't AI gets out of control. The risk is nobody knows who's actually in control. And that's when things break. Jobs, identity systems, data privacy, election integrity. All of that depends on clarity, not speed. And this is the tension that makes the story important. If you're someone trying to protect yourself, learn these tools and get ahead of AI, or even just stay sane as the world changes, this kind of centralized rule can either help or hurt you. It can stabilize things or lock you into one set of rules that never update fast enough, especially on the federal side. And I don't know which one this will be yet, but based on how little they're saying, you can feel there's a catch somewhere. Now, I want to get to the part I teased earlier. This is the one detail that no one is talking about, but it might be the biggest reveal. Several AI companies, the big ones, not the tiny startups, they've been pushing for something called preemption authority, which means they want the federal government to block states from interfering with AI deployment. Why? Because state rules are slowing down the launch of their new systems. And if this executive order includes that, which it likely does, then this isn't about protecting consumers. It's about speeding up rollout. It's about making sure nothing slows the race. And here's the twist. If the states lose this fight and the federal rule becomes the only rule, then the people with the most influence over AI policy become the AI companies, not the people or the government. They'll shape it. They'll interpret it. They'll meet with regulators privately. And when you hear the phrase one rule, you have to ask, one rule written by who? One rule enforced by who? And one rule benefiting who? Those are three different and important questions. So the most concerning thing isn't the executive order itself, it's the silence around it. When governments hide the details, it usually means the details change something big. And when you tie that to the speed that AI is growing right now, the real takeaway isn't panic, it's awareness. It's recognizing how fragile these systems are when leaders don't communicate. And it's understanding that if you wait for government to protect you from AI, you're going to be waiting forever. So I'm going to wrap this up with a simple question that you can answer in the comments, because I'm curious where you land on this. Do you trust a single federal AI rule more than 50 states? Or does that make you feel even more uneasy? And do you feel like AI companies should have that much influence? Let me know what you think, because this is going to be the fight going into next year. And once again, if you want tools to protect yourself from this mess, Those links are in the description.